Morning, everyone. Hello, everyone. My name is Dolapo, Iji Dolapo Ejiwaye, but Dolapo for short. And just as she mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Trade Flow Africa. And thank you for the beautiful introduction. I appreciate this. Once again, thank you, Dinest, for this opportunity. And happy World MSME Day to every single person here. And I hope that just as the theme of this year is that we will continue to build a stronger future together. So let's get right into it. So when I first got this topic, I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, this is something we all talk about every time. So by the way, if you can hear any background noise, please blame it on the people doing construction right beside us here. Uh, but yes, okay, so when I first got this topic, I was thinking in my mind that this is something we discuss every time, but how can we take a different approach to it, right? Just as you mentioned, at Trade Flow Africa, we support both big businesses and SMEs alike. We have a special focus on SMEs. We have two initiatives that particularly target and support our SMEs for the expansion goals. So we are of the sole belief that it is not the same way a large business that seemingly has all the resources, in terms of like the financial resources, the people, that is human capital and all. It is not the same way they would grow across the continent or even just expand across the world in general that an SME should or an MSME should. And then it's important to take in that context when you're even considering exporting or even going into international trade. So how I usually like to start when I'm discussing this kind of topic is to say, what is export really? Like, what does export mean to you as a business? So to export, when people hear it, they think, oh, you know what? It's as simple as carrying my goods from one country to another, right? And they are mostly right, to a large extent. So export simply means you manufacture your goods in one country, you manufacture products in one country. It sometimes also covers services, but that's a story for another day. I will leave this to tangibles for now, right? Because majorly focused on the agriculture and the FMCG sectors for the purpose of this conversation and for purpose of our work at Trade Flow as well. So it is you manufacturing your goods locally in your country and then sending it or selling it, preferably using selling, to another country, or to consumers in other countries and in other markets, right? So you hear me use the word market a lot in this conversation. It simply means country, right? With consumers that are available to buy and are ready to buy your goods. So when you think about how an SME would expand, you would think, oh yeah, there's franchising. Why are we not using franchising? Like the way we have Chicken Republic, right? In Lagos, and then in Abuja, in Ogun State, and then in Oyo State, we have Chicken Republic all over, right? And in Ondo State, and then the same Chicken Republic that we have in Nigeria, the same business model, the same branding exists in Ghana, owned by local Ghanaians, right? But then the what do you call it now? But with a franchising license of a situation, right? From the main owners of Chicken Republic back here in Nigeria. So that's a very interesting model, but it takes a whole lot. It requires so much resources. So when you think about it, it requires a lot of money, it requires a lot of like building the brand, to be a reputable one, to be a recognizable one, distinctively recognizable, and then to even growing the business model to making sure that, oh, this brand is self-sufficient, is generating income, and that's how it will be attractive for someone else in another country to say, you know what, we need this in our market, and I'm willing to invest my money in this, to making it a reality in our market. So that's one of the ways that the big boys do it, in quotes. And then there's a joint venture. A company and another company come together, and then it creates something special. And then of course there's a merger and acquisition. So when you think about merger, it's when, say for instance, a bank, let's say a commercial bank like say GT Bank and then a UBA come together, and then they are coming together permanently in a situation until, of course, like for there might be room for dissolution eventually. Um, and then there is acquisition, is when a company acquires another company, right? And then there's a licensing. You have an innovative technology or proprietary technology that you've created. And of course, you then want to, even in the process, you're like, okay, you know what? You're doing some intellectual property protection for it, right? And then you're then saying you want to sell this license, or you want to license your solution for use by other companies. So we see this kind of situation with Microsoft, right? With the technology and then licensing it to laptop manufacturers, manufacturers like Dell, HP, right? And then there's also then subsidiary. Subsidiary to is for the big boys, right? You think about how you as a company back at home here in Nigeria, you're looking at establishing another country, and then you're then setting a different company up there that might be bigger or even smaller than what you have in Nigeria. But you then carry it as though it's a your business structure is as though that is a subsidiary. It's that is owned and controlled in most situations and in critical situations, right, by the home or the bigger mother company at home. But so all of these things, you can imagine that to develop like a unique or proprietary technology is expensive, even if it's something you have passion for and you have the innovative capacity for, right? It is also very expensive to come up with mergers and acquisitions. You can imagine like when mergers are happening, there are so many lawyers in place, and it takes a lot of money to also then even consider merging with another bank or with a different company or with an institution. Um, and of course, acquisition is also a different game, except your company is being acquired, then that's a different conversation. However, I always say that export is the easiest and is the most effective way for an SME or an MSME looking to expand to get started, right? So I say this because it does not necessarily require you traveling to a new country yourself. You can do your market research from home. You can engage with local partners from home. It's and of course it does not require you necessarily setting up with that country. Yes, you might be required to like go through the regulatory procedures and all, but it is not as difficult as you're going there to physically set up, or even looking for like franchise partners and all. So I would imagine everyone on the call would agree with me that export is perhaps the most friendly for smaller companies. Um, and then one thing we always say at Trade Flow is that you're not too small to export. So just because you're an MSME, please first erase that from your mind. You're not too small to export. You might think, oh, but we don't necessarily have trucks or we don't necessarily have partnership with the cargo companies. But it still goes back to you're not too small to export. I mean, data has it, right? That MSMEs create the most jobs on the continent. I mean, they contribute to the most GDP, right? To the like I mean they contribute the most GDP, right? To the African total GDP, right? That's a very significant amount, you know. And then imagine like over 90% of the businesses that are registered in Africa are also MSMEs. So if you're creating the most jobs, you're contributing so much to the GDP of the entire continent. I mean, so now imagine if you're able to then expand, you're able to then grow and enter other markets with your goods, be it that you're in fashion, be it that you're in consumer goods like food, or be it that you're in beverage, be it that you're even in like the core agriculture space, which is like, oh, maybe you're farming cocoa or you're farming cashew nuts. All of these things are all of these things are things that are required in other markets, right? That we don't yet pay attention to. But we'll come to that gradually. So exporting doesn't have to be, oh, I'm carrying my goods from Nigeria to China or to the UK or to the US, but that is also part of exporting, right? So at TradeFlow, we have something called Global Africa Trade. So it's our initiative for SMEs that are looking to sell globally. So that's different. And what we do with them is essentially to help them find buyers. And then we do all our work for SMEs for free at this stage, right? Because we believe we encourage them, they grow, and then of course they can then move on to what we call trade flow agency, where we serve the bigger boys in quotes. However, we also have the Intra-African Trader Center. So from the name Intra-African Trader Center, IATC, what we do is to facilitate and promote intra-African trade amongst MSMEs, right, across the continent. So we are dealing across 7 countries right now: Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Rwanda, Angola, of course, Morocco, and when they're now looking into Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire is a very new terrain. Um, However, what we've then realized in the process is that the benefit of exporting for MSMEs is huge, or the benefits are so many. So we can start by the obvious, which is you want to make profit, particularly you want to earn in foreign currency. So you're thinking, oh, if I sell to a different country that has a stronger currency, you might end up getting your money in naira by the time you're going through all the payment collectors, right? However, you can also still choose to retain or to keep that money in the foreign currency. It could even be Ghana cedi. Their currency is quite strong. It could even be, it could literally even be Kenya shillings, right? So all these other countries with like stronger currencies, and then so it doesn't have to always be USD, but also if it's USD, it is very good. So exporting helps to generate more revenue for your company, right? So that increases your profits. It also helps you to reduce your business dependency on your country's on the country's fluctuating economy, right? So if you're on this call, you're not Nigerian, whichever country you're in, right? What essentially happens is that your business is currently usually dependent on your country's fluctuating economy. The whole world is kind of fluctuating right now if we were being realistic, right? So um but then if you're in Nigeria, there are so many issues with the government, and of course different policies that are affecting things on a daily basis. So what we are saying essentially is that if you're exporting, yes, while you're here manufacturing, while you are most likely subjected to the economic terrain here. But what exporting does for you is that it reduces your dependency on this, and it reduces the impact of our country's fluctuating economy on your business. So you're then now talking to like people in other markets, you have buyers in other markets. So if the purchasing power of the average Nigeria is reducing, right? Of the average Nigerian is reducing, you're then now selling to someone in, say, Morocco with a stronger purchasing power. And then it's always like around this time I like to give a short story I heard in Ghana just a couple of weeks ago, and then I was told by the by senior advisor at the National Coordination Office for AFCFT in Ghana, and then very interesting story. So you know how we have Iru, our local Iru here in Nigeria. So it's actually locust beans, right? So in Kenya, it's called dawa dawa. In Ghana, locust beans, some people call it dawa dawas when they have their own local name. So the office there advised an SME, an MSME, in fact, a micro business owner. No, I don't think she's even gotten to the stage of being small, so it's still micro. To say, oh, you know what? How come? Why can't we exhibit your locust beans like in the small packages that you put them already? Can we exhibit them in Kenya as part of their trade mission, right? So they went ahead and exhibited, of course, convincing her, telling her they're covering the payments and the bills. And of course, they exhibited their product. And interestingly, it sold out. But you'd expect that, right? Because it's a small business. So you'd expect, oh yeah, it will sell out. In just small pieces. But luckily for her in the process, and interestingly, a company reached out to them while they were on the trip to say, you know what, we would like to be taking a container of this on a monthly basis with a significant amount paid upfront. This is this woman going all the way from a micro business to almost a large business overnight. Because if you're shipping even a 20 feet container, from Ghana to Kenya, that's good business. And this is because they saw that the quality of locust beans was good. And then they're like, you know what, they've been looking for good locust beans for a while. This is something we have in Nigeria, but we probably would never know that it's such a big deal to them in Kenya. And obviously, because of the lack of visibility, we do not know what they find valuable. They do not know what we find valuable. So as much as we may have it, they might then start to like check online and they realize that, oh, there's locust beans in China. Let's import it to Kenya. Meanwhile, it is as essential as there is locust beans in Nigeria. And who knows if the source of locust beans in China is the one being carried from Nigeria, right? So this woman then our headache went from, waking up and thinking about, how do I make sale today of maybe total sale of like $500 worth, um, to how do I make sale of, or how do I meet this demand on a regular basis, right? So then she now starts to think about, financing it, hiring more hands, but we'll come to all of those things gradually. But that is a very interesting story to me, that we're looking to replicate more and to scale that kind of a situation here at TradeFlow by working with more MSMEs, right? So to diversify risk is also a benefit, right? It's one of the reasons why you should also consider expansion. So you want to diversify your risk. You want to make sure that, you know what, God forbid something happens in this economy, I can always bank on the fact that I have sales from the other economy. God forbid that a regulation comes up or a policy comes up that shuts down my business here in Nigeria. Oh, I can always bank on my buyers in Ghana. Yes, my source of production might be affected, but there is always just that what do we call it now? The need or the importance or the opportunity to just diversify your risk and spread your risk, right? Then of course there's also just the increased demand for your product in general. uh, but that said, one of the things I know that as I'm talking, you're like, oh yeah, all of this sounds very interesting, but there are the problems, and I will not deny the fact that there are serious problems. So just as the bigger boys face problems in this space, the MSMEs also face problems. So it is as simple as I do not have the money, right? Financial constraints. How do I get the money to even say, you know what, I want to pay customs duty? Which brings me to the customs requirements as well, right? Can you're thinking in your head as an MSME owner, can I meet up with the customs requirements? Which will then will come back to as well. Will come to in a bit as well. And then you're thinking about the tariffs, you know, the border tariffs, even not just for your country, but also for like the country you're exporting to, right? But the beautiful part of that is that if you have recognized a local partner who then serves as the importer in the other markets, that tariff burden is off you for at least for that moment. Unless you negotiate a different arrangement where you're covering all your sales, or not just even all your sales, all your marketing, all your tariffs yourself, but which is not the ideal. We would not advise that. And then, of course, you have the issue of okay, so now that I've found buyers in Ghana, for instance, as a Nigerian business owner, how do I make sure that the Ghana person or the Ghanaian can make payment to me? So payment collection. So this is a problem, but for every problem, there are solutions existing, and it's just for you to find the best. But when you're thinking about it, you probably even tried it before. That you've come across some payments collectors in quotes. They could be financial technology companies like fintech. They could even be like our regular commercial banks. And then you're thinking they are quite expensive. Perhaps it's their rates. So comparing rates, having that visibility. So all of those things are issues that we've identified and that we're trying to work alongside MSMEs in the different situations to solve, right? And then, of course, there's a varying profit margin. How do you make sure that you're making enough money? How do you make sure that, oh, how do you even convert, right? How do you figure out your pricing for the new market to make sure that you then even earn profit? And then there is a logistics issue. How do I ship? Which is a trusted one. Should I be insuring my goods? Which are the best and or MSME logistics friendly logistics company or MSME friendly insurance companies? So all of these things are very important, right? And then there are the major barriers also, which I mentioned earlier, visibility. Before you even start to say you want to export, you want to have visibility into other markets so that you can make a choice of the market you want to go into, right? You do not want a market that is saturated by the kind of goods you're offering. You do not want a market that um, so let's say you're in fashion and then you make a direct clothes, right? So you use the direct print to and fabrics to make your clothes or to make your designs, and then you do not want to go into a market where the same thing. In fact, they have like local manufacturers and local producers of that, right? That would not necessarily be competitive for you. But you want to go into a market where you know what they do not have this, but you believe based on your research and your conversations with local people, that is the local partners in that market, that there's opportunity for it, and then you've been able to verify that people are very much interested in it. We'll come to like your marketing and your research techniques in a bit, right? As we start to talk about how you prepare for export. Um, However, besides lack of visibility, there is also just like the varying, you know, trade regulations. You're thinking what applies in Nigeria might not apply elsewhere. In most cases, does not even apply elsewhere. So for some of our bigger companies, when they're coming into Africa, they're thinking, especially if they're white owned, they have this very interesting perspective, thinking, oh, you know what? Africa is one country. They think about it like Europe, right? They're like, oh, it's the same European Union, so it's just one single market, you know, across board. Of although, and of course, Africa is approaching that gradually under the African Continental Free Trade Area, right? We'll come back to that AFCFTA in a bit, and it's very important for all of us to know, all MSMEs, all large companies. but so as not to be like them, right? And make that mistake, because we are here, we're Africans, we should know that it is a different ball game when you're approaching a different market. This is like a market of 54 countries, right? From one market to the other, there are different regulations. You might find similarities, but we've had a company that made a mistake that, oh, you know what? Because we invested this in Nigeria and it panned out well, we can take that same approach with Ghana. And it's failed, woefully. And then when we got into the conversation with them, we realized that that was what was driving their approach. I'm like, you know what? Even just from upfront on research, you realize that the population of Ghana is not even half as much as the whole of, let's say, southwest or northwest Nigeria, right? It's super small compared to like the Nigerian population. So depending on your goods, if you're selling let's say processed food or packaged food, um in Nigeria, for instance, you might be able to target a lot more people, especially if like the price is like very, very low middle class friendly, right? The pricing or your price point. But however, if you take that same price point to Ghana, you might not be able to make as much gain. So you might have to like increase it, because you're like, okay, you know what, there are lesser people to buy there, and there are many more people. I mean, over 200 million people in Nigeria. uh Although you're not selling necessarily to all the 200 million. But yeah, so there are all those issues, and then of course there's a cultural and language barrier. And why this is a problem is because it helps you understand the fact that the different consumers, or the behavior of the consumers in the different markets, would differ, to vary. So Nigerians, even in Nigeria alone, so compare, say, Abuja to Lagos. Lagosians are always rushing. Um, they are up as early as like 5 a.m. Some people 4 o'clock. Shops are being opened as early as shops are open as early as sometimes 7, 8. Whereas in Abuja, even by the design of just by the design of the infrastructures, the placement of the infrastructure itself, people are not usually rushing. Their roads are not fully packed. Even if individuals are rushing to achieve different things, it's not common that you would see, oh, shops being open so early, right? I mean, you may argue otherwise, and I would totally agree with you. But then there are so many differences, right? So many differences between us, even as a country within this terrain in Nigeria. So, but then not to now imagine, or to come to think of it, like, oh, Nigeria to Ghana, or Nigeria to Kenya, or Nigeria to Rwanda. Rwanda, for instance, they have a smooth paced life as well. No one is rushing, people are not honking. And then so all these little things might look like, oh, they do not matter, but they do when you're making a decision of a market to go. And of course, when you're setting or creating your export strategy, which is something we'll come to as we begin to discuss the preparation for export. But before I proceed, I know it's a keynote speech, but I have a very interesting approach. So I would just ask if anyone has a question based on all the things we've discussed now, before I proceed. If I have your permission, Dinest, to do that, of course.
Yeah, sure. Can go ahead. So
Thank
if you
you.
have questions, please go ahead to ask. Okay, Joe Weird Enterprise can go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, thank you so much for the session. Please, I just want to ask, how do one join your community, the community that you said one can receive information about exporting?
Okay, before the end of this session, I'll join the Links Journal community. I'll drop the Links Journal community in the chat box.
Right, thank you.
All right. So now I'm taking questions on what Madam Jitolako has said so far. So yeah, Chioma, you can go ahead and ask your question. Hi, Chioma. Chioma, if you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
Now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Hello, Chioma.
Okay. Yes. I'm in transit, so my background might be quite noisy.
Okay.
Thank you very much for this great initiative. I've been following this Africa Free Trade Zone discussion for for about 2 years now. A lot has been said. The documents that ratify these agreements and all of that. A lot of organizations are coming up to speak about it, to offer help. So what it means for me is that I've attended a few trainings. I've joined sessions talking about exporting, from Nigeria to Africa, to other African countries and Europe and America. But the thing that still stands is that we are still finding it difficult to even take off, because one thing I've got to realize is that it is export is not child's play. To protect yourself as an SME, and to also protect the integrity of your country, so that this plenty talk about Nigerian products being denied, being rejected, can be reduced. So it's not something I would want to jump into, because I want to make money in foreign currency and all of that. Your organization needs to, I don't know, go a bit higher than what all other people are mouthing that they are going to do. Like, this hand holding is very, very important. I have products, I have NAFDAC, I have FDA, but I still need hand holding to say, okay, um there's who can take my product sample and even take a look at it, and also like identify a partner or a buyer. And then how do I take off, even if it's the smallest quantity, 10 kg, 20 kg, and let it get into the market, and let's begin to see feedback and reactions from people who are using it. Taking it one step at a time, one little baby step at a time, and moving forward. Hand holding is what I need. I have products. I can say, okay, let the product even gain acceptance before we begin to talk about the finance, because for me, finance is not the first thing. Let us enter into the market first. So what is your organization going to do differently from so many other organizations out there who are saying that they want to help SMEs move their products into the export market? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Choma. I believe she was one who just spoke. Okay, that was a very great one, and I totally agree with you. So, like you said, the unloading is important, and then access to markets, even for a start. So, at the beginning of the conversation, I had also just mentioned briefly the situation in Ghana, for instance, right? And the example of the success story in Ghana, and how just some samples of the product was taken into a different market on exhibition. So, our strategy at Trade Flow, right? One of the things we do, and why we're working across those countries, is not just because we want to have like multiple presence, is because we realize that usually whoever is going to be buying your product in the new market is also an MSME owner. So they are either buying to use to create their own product, or they are buying to resell. So what we do at TradeFlow is to identify who is the buyer of what, right? Who is interested in buying what. So for instance, I do not know exactly what you manufacture, what you produce, but let's say you do chips, right? And then you have some distinguishing factor. Maybe you have different flavors of chips you do. I'm talking about, like, let's say plantain chips. They sell in traffic all across, right? Or let's say yours as a distinguishing factor. There is a value added ingredient in yours. Maybe it's healthier, or it's more affordable. I do not agree to affordability as much. I'll come to that. But say it's healthier. What we do at TradeFlow is to then find buyers for you in a different market. So we do all the research work, then we do all the groundwork, looking into our networks across these different countries, and identify who is ready to even pick up a few things from you for a start to test things. So I totally agree that the hand holding is important. Yes, we can talk about all the requirements from now to tomorrow, but there are people just basically even selling online. They're not necessarily tagging it as export, but although they're selling to consumers in other markets, and it can be said to be export, right? So I agree with you. And then so what we do differently is actually the hand holding. Is to say, you know what, we're not necessarily giving you the finance ourselves, but what we can do to you is to help you identify the right financing partner for you, and to help you get into negotiations and get into the room with them, right? And then so all of this is also because we identify the impact and the importance of intra-African trade we're not trading well amongst ourselves. We're not trading enough amongst ourselves before you even start to think about the fact that your chips or your products might be valued in the US, which is probably already saturated, which is probably where all the e-commerce brands are facing. We're saying, you know what, why not even look at a Rwanda where your product might be valued? So there was a meeting I had just a couple of years ago. I remember now, like 2 years ago, at the Rwandan Development Board, and I realized that they come to Nigeria on trade missions, right? To bring some of their goods, and Nigeria does the same thing. I believe through Nigerian Export Promotion Council. There are even states in Nigeria. Just last week, we had a session with some Mondo State MSMEs, and then realized that, you know, in the process of exploring, we realized there's actually something called the Ondo State Export Strategy and Guidelines that the state itself is even preparing for trade missions. But if MSMEs do not have access to this kind of information, a lot of people were not aware of the fact that that even existed in their own states, right? The trade mission will go on, it will happen, and then their goods will not be taken along. So we realized that even the public sector players cannot do this alone. So we've come up with like a quite a robust strategy in execution. But what we're now doing is gradually saying, you know what do you sell? Okay, let's help you look for the markets that you can find a reasonable buyer that would not underprice your product, but I will place the maximum value on your product for optimal results, right? So that hand holding bit is what we are doing to now say, okay, you know what, this person that placed this order now, are you should we to even test the market, to test waters with you before we then start to say, okay, you know, we'll go and get the NEPC certificate, you know, exporter certificate and all. How do we even like get your product to even sell into those markets? There are people which might not necessarily be the most ideal situation, but there are brands that are selling into other markets, not necessarily, you know, with a lot of marketing, no noise behind it, but just getting to those markets, like you said, to get feedback, and then to even know that, okay, you know what, my goods are needed or are wanted in this market, and there are people willing to pay for them, and they actually pay for them. So the ideal way is usually, oh yeah, let's go through all the regulations, let's get all the requirements sorted before we even then start to like export, and you spend so much time and so much money without even testing waters, and the market might not even now be the ideal one at the end of the day. But what we try to do is to help you get buyers. So we then call it like a seller buyer matching network, right? So we do the matchmaking. We then have matchmaking programs. So we're talking to our partners across these different countries, and then they're like, oh, you know what? There's a need for this, there's a demand for this. Do you have it? So what people doing like the market research locally in those markets. So that hand holding bit before we then start to talk about, okay, yes, now you want to like, oh, find a way to like ship. It might not necessarily be ship in that sense, but it might just be, oh, do I want to use, which logistics company should I use? So we're building partnerships with all of those people, from financing firms to logistics companies to insurance providers to payment collectors, to just make sure everything is seamless. And then so that is the work we're doing now. I don't know if that answers your question, Madam Choma.
Hi, Choma, can you hear us?
Question. So what I think I'll be doing is I'll be standing by so that I can get your link and connect with you so that the hand holding can start, and then maybe I can find a way to send my samples to you so that when you see it, you can now decide the best way to let your partners all across the countries to have a look at it, to get a taste of it, and then we can then continue the discussions.
That sounds very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we can proceed with the session now. But I'm happy to be
Yes,
hearing
we-
these pressing questions. These are all the questions we get all the time. And then that's why Tradeflow said, you know what, we need a different approach to this, right? A lot of talks. We will do a lot of talks. But like she said, the action is what matters, right? And then we realize that, I mean, and for even our partners, they're always saying, oh, yes, this makes sense. The part, you know, the action itself needs to occur. The action itself needs to, is what people really need. Everyone is tired of just let's say, oh, how do we do this? How do we do that? But let's do it, right? Let's go on. It doesn't have to even be robust trade missions, but it could just be as simple as identifying. So the topic we want to like touch next is how to prepare for export, right? And this, what I like to do around there is to give very very practical approaches, and to make sure that even without us indulging you, you can actually even get started yourself, right? A lot of people will tell you, oh, you need to just get all your documents. That's like how to get ready for for export. But it's beyond that, right? In our case, we suggest market research first. Market research is simpler in this age with this. Please do not underestimate this. It's simpler these days. We've just like, by this I mean our phones, for anyone who's not watching on video. By this I mean our phones, the internet is simpler these days, right? So what we advise is that you want to learn about your sector or the subcategory of your sector. So if you're in FMCG, you're probably thinking, oh, I'm in packaged foods. So you want to learn about the subcategory of your sector across Africa. So you can say a simple search around trying to find out, oh, which country in Africa does let's say does let's say alcoholic beverage is too far. Let's say food, packaged foods, and then you can even put a sample, like let's say chips, for instance. I don't know why I keep saying chips, but let's say chips, right? You can say, oh, you know what, which country in Africa is the most consumed? So you're trying to like, and then that question might not be the most appropriate. And that's why a lot of people even now use ChatGPT. It cannot help you necessarily directly with your your market research. But what it can do is to help you rephrase the question in the way that you can get the best answers, right? By the time you now put it into Google. And then you can start to then find out that, oh, you know what, it could be Kenya. And then you're wondering, right? What makes it special in Kenya? Why are people always eating it? Does it have any health implications for them, or like positive feedback on it? You want to know why your sector or the subcategory of your sector, your industry is thriving in that country. In the process, you want to start to identify who are the players, right? Who are the competitors? Are they locals? And then it's also easy to know. It takes a bit of dedication, which is part of the work we do. Is that okay? You know what? We've chosen. Okay, so I've seen that Kenya is maybe number one in this, and then ideally, you also want to see both number one and number two. You don't want to just like fixate on one country at the start at this stage, right? However, when you are now making a decision to say, you know what, and I want to start to sell, it is advisable to start with one country. Nobody is saying that, and no one has ever said that you will not be successful at exporting if you only export to one country. If that country is a great match for your product and for your business model and for everything that your business stands for, and you can hack it, there is really no need going into all the other countries for a start and then spreading thin. You know that, oh, you have limited resources. This is an MSME we're talking about. You need to be very strategic so that you can then grow from there, right? So you're thinking about conducting your market research. So if you've seen that, oh, it's Kenya, you've then studied like, okay, who are your local players in that market, right? Your competitors, people who are doing similar things. Do you want to then go through the approach that we say, oh, one is indirect, one is direct? Do you want to directly compete with them, or do you want to collaborate with them, which is like the much more indirect approach, which is saying maybe one ingredient is missing in their product, right? Or you think their product can be better, and you know that that ingredient is something you can source in Nigeria and supply to them. That is also exporting. Doesn't necessarily mean it's your total package or your finished product you're carrying to them. You might just be sourcing the ingredient that you already even sourced to use for your product in Nigeria and supplying that to them, right? And then you're thinking about the direct, which is then you want to enter that market because you believe you have the chance, right? And then it might be for those who have a lot of money, right, to spare. They are thinking, oh, I'm going to buy the product of those competitors. We've seen companies do it. I'm going to buy the product of those competitors, even if it's just samples. Look for someone who's coming to Nigeria, even if it's not to just import it yourself. Or you, people say, oh, when they use the word import, that's to be something big. No, if you're bringing something into Nigeria across borders, it's already import, right? It's already importation. So you're thinking about these practical means. And then you're not buying, you probably even want to find a Nigerian in your circle. It could be in your religious place of or your place of worship. It could be in your religious network or even in your business network. It could even be family network, right? These are practical ways. Who is in Kenya? Who do I know that lives in Kenya? Who do I know that might know someone who lives in Kenya that can help me buy this people's product and test it or send it to me or give me feedback to say maybe it doesn't taste like the ones you buy at home. But if you don't trust their judgment enough, you ask them to please send it to you. They don't mind covering the cost, right? Or you find someone who's coming home from there in coach, right? From there to Nigeria. They bring it, you compare, you analyze it. You're like, okay, you know what? This makes you a better person or a better business for that market with that same product. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. And then you're then thinking, okay, now that I want to tap into that market, let me even do some survey, right? Because you don't want to also then take all your eggs and put them in one basket. So I was telling a group last week, right, that it's as simple sometimes you're not able to even find the WhatsApp groups of people in that country, right? But WhatsApp has this thing now that this is very, it might sound like, oh, it's easy. And I'm checking my phone because so on WhatsApp there is something called communities, right? Is it communities? Yes, there's community and there's channels. So there are channels that belong to, like, oh, say comedians in other countries or this and that, right? That you can actually search and join. So you probably go and search online, who are the popular comedians there, who are the popular people in this country, influencers, especially modern day influencers. And then you're following them, you join their space on WhatsApp, and then you are particularly identifying. They might be speaking languages you don't understand, but there's Google Translate. Some of them might be lucky that they're speaking English. But what you don't want to also do is to say, oh, I'm new here, I'm Nigerian, I want to meet people. Then you get a lot of like scam and a lot of spam, right? In your inbox, which you do not want. And then the other alternative is you're going on Facebook groups. You're, ident- you're identifying country specific Facebook groups, or you're identifying someone on LinkedIn and you're befriending them, right? To say, you know what, I really want to bring our products into your market. But we learn to learn more. If you have some time to jump on a call, I'm able, not necessarily even bring them to your personal space like WhatsApp. It could just be a Google Meet or a Zoom call. But these are very practical means of understanding. And who knows, that person might be the first person to introduce you to your first buyer, in quotes, importer in the other markets. That person might be, these are some of the methods that we use also to get those people, to get our local partners across this market. And there is really no need like holding this information and holding this knowledge, because like these are things that we've tested, we've seen, we've talked to people about, we've explored, right? And realized that these are the things that are working. And it's not like we're going to ask SMEs to come and pay us for it. So there's no point ordering it. It's free game, in quotes. But then, so that said, those are all the ways you can conduct your market research. Then, of course, there are the regulations. Of course, it's important to also, while you're researching your market, you're researching the regulations, particularly affecting your subcategory. So you want to come down from sector to, say, food sector to subcategory. What applies with NAFDAC here in Nigeria might not apply with, say, FDA in Ghana. It might not apply. So they have like different regulations. They might require you to have local participation. In some countries, they require that. And you're thinking, say you design and sell lingerie, like this, the women's underwear, right? You're thinking, oh, you know what, it sells in Nigeria, maybe because Nigeria is two parks. Let me see, maybe some people would value this as either bikinis to the beach or somewhere, say in Ghana, in Angola, they have a lot of like, water bodies in Angola, and then they have literally a life routine of going to the sea to enjoy themselves. So you're thinking, okay, that might be worth a shot. But then what you don't want to do is take that into a Morocco, for instance, right? Because even if you're taking to a Morocco, your advertisement will not be the same, your marketing approach will not be the same. Your market entry approach will be totally defined by what regulations are in that market. You cannot necessarily put up a billboard with somebody wearing bikini to market your bikini, or to be sharing flyers or people with bikini, to find someone on ground to help you share flyers there. That might not work. But in Ghana, that might work, because there isn't, these are more secular environments as opposed to very in Nigeria would say it falls under the penal code, right? By the way, my background is in law, but so I'm a lawyer. So in other countries, there are regulations strictly abolishing these things, right? So they might see it as evasive and very, very out of place. So you want to like look at those very tiny looking regulations, right? When you're expanding or when you're even choosing a market to go into. And then, of course, very importantly, you also want to then recognize, are there trade missions? What is the trade relationship between Nigeria, your own home country? Because that's why some of our products get denied. You've invested your time, you've found local buyers, but what the local buyer doesn't know is um, that is local buyer in the other market. Say in Morocco, what they probably do not know is that Nigeria probably has, they don't probably not even understand the trade relationship between Nigeria and their country. But you as the seller, it is in your place to, you're in the right place and in the ideal situation to research that, to ask questions locally at home, to say, it's all online. Is there any policy? Although I'll be honest, not all of those things are updated. Not all of this, the website of especially public sector people's websites is not usually updated. So you always have to find people who have information. That's part of what we do as a community, to say, okay, you know what? Is there something changing with customs requirements? Please let us hear it. We want to know what is happening so we can inform the people who need to know, right? The big boys probably have like people on the reports every single time, right? But the SMEs are not afforded opportunity because of the size of the company and because they're still growing, right? Which is ideal, which is understandable rather, not necessarily ideal. But what we are saying is that you want to look at that new market or that other market you're targeting. After you say, okay, you know what, it's good for us, our product will be valued there. I found someone who wants to even buy. What is Nigeria's trade relationship with that market, right? What are our economic policies governing that market? And then after you realize that you're not identified, so let's say Nigeria has a favorable one, we have a favorable relationship with them. You're then not thinking to yourself, right? That what are there trade missions? Are these people, do they have people from their own embassies here in Nigeria? Of course, they would have an embassy here in Nigeria. They have people from their country. Do their embassies do anything that's to do with, let's say, trade exchanges, exchange programs? Or I can tell them that, oh, I can even be supplying their people, even if it's just the ingredients. It doesn't have to be the finished product, right? Which would also boost their own economy. You package your story in that way, right? And you're making sure that you're not packaging lies, you're packaging the real truths, right? And then you're also thinking, is Nigeria as a country, or does Nigeria as a country have any do we have any trade missions that would be that is directly approaching that other country or those other countries, right? So those are things you want. Those are like very, very practical ways for you to start to identify the right markets for you. There's no point going to a market if you know that you found a buyer, but you know that Nigeria does not have a relationship with them in that sense, or a favorable relationship with them, not just by what we are saying, right? But documented by law, by policy, by agreement. You know that, oh, to our Minister of Trade and the minister assigned, or someone from the country assigned as a representative of the country to ours, right? So those are things you want to consider. And then, of course, it's very important for you to create your export strategy. How do you create an export strategy? What I'm going to do for the purpose of time is also just to like scan over this and brush over it, right? Of course, not only countries should have export strategies. Nigeria, as like I mentioned, even Ondo State, as large businesses also have export strategy for their MSMEs, right? And even for their country, for their products in general. Large businesses have for their products in general, and they have different. Large businesses have for like products that, or they will say, okay, you know what, this particular product. So for instance, they will say, oh, you know what, cocoa might sell better, cocoa butter might sell better in the UK, in the US. Okay, so let's take it there. Oh, so people route things through Turkey. That's probably where they manufacture their product. Okay, so why don't we start to sell our cocoa butter, for instance, to Turkey, right? To people in Turkey. And then you're thinking about, okay, as opposed to selling to the end consumers, why not sell it to the manufacturers? So you're comparing that. So large businesses usually have export strategy, but so it is very important, right? That even as a small business, you should have one. It's quite easy to create one. First thing, you want to assess your export readiness. So it's actually how people create business plans. I'm sure a lot of people have joined so many sessions on how to like create business plans. It's similar, but it's a shorter document. But then it depends. It might even be longer if you're very, very intentional about your research, right? And you want to just build up all the research. But remember, you can't have all the information upfront, but you must try to get as much as you can. So you want to know, do you have a valuable product? So you're assessing yourself now and you're being honest. Is your product really valuable? Or is it just based on trend? You know, okay, so I'm creating this business because right now, let's say pure water is selling a lot, or everybody's looking. So for instance, you know the way there's cholera right now in Lagos, right? God help us to that situation. So a lot of people are saying, oh, you know what, maybe my own is to start to sell, or maybe hand sanitizers that will help people prevent maybe cholera or being exposed to cholera. You know those things. I want to say, oh, I want to start to brand a special type of water, or let's say vitamins or something. But the point is that what happens, just like COVID, right? What happens when the case is almost to zero, right? All the cases we are experiencing, all the cases that the governments are recording regarding cholera. So if it's trend based, you're then thinking, oh, yeah, it might be valuable right now. It might not be valuable extensively, you know, over a long period of time. It might not be valuable taking it to another market. But I'm sure we all know that here. But then you want to also then consider, do you have an established business model? That is, are people buying here? How are you selling? What price? How do you make your money? How do you even distribute it? How do you make sure that, oh, after somebody has placed the order, it can get to them, right? So it is important for you to assess these things locally, that you even have these situations too, right? And then you're also then thinking, do you have the capacity to currently sustain what you sell in this market? If you decide to take it to other market, can you sustain it? Even if it's like like Madam Chama said earlier, right? Even if it's like 10 kg, can you continuously sell 10 kg? There is demand for it. And say there is demand for 20 kg. Can you find other people to join with you or for you to quickly take from them and resell, to the market? All those kind of like questions are the things you need to be asking yourself. And you want to then come to like the pricing. Will my pricing be competitive in the new market at the same time profitable? So competitive might mean, oh yeah, your pricing is fair, is affordable. But you want to then think about the fact that will your pricing be profitable for you as a business? You don't want to go and sell because you want to be competitive and you want to compete with other people in that market. That's why I said earlier that affordability might not be the best approach to market entry when you're thinking about exporting. Affordability will work if your quality is good and if it doesn't reduce your quality of cost and if it will be profitable for your business. You don't want you're selling Nigeria for 100 naira, right? Let's say per sachet, per item. You don't want to up a unit. You don't want to then go into a new market and sell at the equivalent of 17 naira. If you know that at home your cost of production is already like 65 naira, but because when you're exporting, you have to consider the fact that you then have to pay your customs, tariffs, all of those things, marketing the new market, your new country, all of those things, right? So you need to make sure that it is profitable for you. And then it's not about I wouldn't use the pricing jargon here. There was a question we got one time in one of our sessions, and we realized that it was about, oh, how do you choose the pricing? And I gave like a cheat code, right? It's not even about oh, you want to do the price shop price pricing of 99.99, 99 naira, 99 kobo. It can be as simple as, like I said, you're researching your competitors. What are they selling for? You convert that, you work back that number. This is something we do for the bigger companies, right? They work back the figures. We get analysts on board. They can afford it, right? So they work back the figures to, okay, so how much would I need to be selling for in Nigeria to make sure that, or how much are we selling for in Nigeria? How much would I need to be manufacturing at or producing at, packaging at? What are the tariffs? You're doing literally like a model around that, a financial model to then choose the price. But then in Kenya, for instance, you're like, oh, you know what? For chips, for plantain chips, someone is selling for equivalent of 115 naira. I'm currently selling for 100 naira here at home, right? So you're like, okay, by the time we're going to that market, after I calculated everything, you're like, oh, we can even afford to do 130 naira equivalent. That works. But in that market, what you don't want to do is to go so high that you are not even competitive, right? Because they already have like local advantage, especially if they're locals or they've managed to, or they've spent a longer time in that market than you have, right? Even they're foreigners, or they're even like a bigger company that you're competing with if you're going into that market. So one thing you want to do, what I always advise people, the cheat code, the easiest to start with. I'm not saying it is law and you must do that and stick with it, but to start with, you can say, you know what, -5 plus 5. If someone is selling for the equivalent of 150 naira, so you could probably do 145 naira, 148, 100 and this, or 152, 153, or 155. That's just an example, right? So -5 plus 5, in some markets you're able to do -10 plus 10, and it could be an equivalent also in dollar, right? Where you're saying, you know what, oh, minus this amount of cents plus this amount of cents. So those are the kind of things that you need to do to assess your export readiness. That can you do +5 and still be profitable in that market, and still profitable for your business and competitive in that new market? So another thing you want to do for your export strategy document is to set your desired export outcomes. So is it that we want to sell about 1,000 units in so over a period of time? But like we were talking about earlier, right? You want to even test the market, right? So is your export strategy, let's say phase 1 or milestone 1, is to say, I want to sell 10 units. Let me even find just one buyer in that market, right? So you want to set your desired export outcomes. You also want to then identify export promotion organizations. In Nigeria, the mother brand for that and the mother agency for that is Nigerian Export Promotion Council. They are very important for your work as an exporter in the making. You need to register with them. And of course, you need to get your CAC documents first, right? That's very important. That is Corporate Affairs Commission. You need to register. It is not just because, oh, government needs you to be paying taxes. That's not it alone. It is as simple as you want to be protected as a brand. So if let's say a Kenyan company is messing with you, or even a fellow Nigerian is messing with your business, you can sue them, because you don't have to sue them as an individual now. You can sue them as a company. So with your brand being recognized, and another thing we talked about briefly in one of the sessions we're in was trademarking, right? If you're in a space or a subcategory of your industry, of your sector, where you realize that your, how do I call it now, your product is something that other people can steal because of how innovative and unique it is, right? And the fact that you know that, so you know what, this is going to bring you a lot of profits, even when you're going to a new market and you've done your researches, right? Or you've done your research, you've done everything, conducted what you need to conduct, right? um the idea is that you want to trademark it. It's something that should be trademarked as a name. You want to do your copywriting, so you want to make sure that you find the ideal intellectual property protection for your brand and for your product, right? So that you're protected in other markets. And then, so while we have a lot of like trademark or IP laws that are very localized, right? So there are other situations where legal advisors would provide insights for you to say, okay, no, this is how you can protect it even in that new market without necessarily even losing anything, right? As much. So another thing you want to do is to determine, oh, your market entry methods, right? Oh, how do I want to enter this market? Do I want to even start by doing e-commerce? Do I want to identify the e-commerce platform there and start to, sign up on the platform and then start to sell, which is one of the ways that we do our global Africa trade, right? We recognize like marketplaces across the world. We talk to them and then we plug in our SMEs, right? Based on what is selling in those markets. We have all of those high level partnership conversations. We do all of the headache talks. And then we're just saying, you know what, how do we get our SMEs on board? We have people who sell this, who sell that. How can they start to sell on your platform, right? So these are things. And if you say, no, you know what, their quantity is smaller, then we then go as a collective to say, okay, we have a ventures and would sell for them, or would find someone amongst all the SMEs, and then introduce them on a call like this and say, are you people willing to sell together? Of course, your product to be separate, your branding might be separate at the end of the day, but are you willing to sell together? So these are ways to like determine your market entry methods. E-commerce is a lot easier, right? Actually, the fact that you can even transfer shipment cost, your logistics cost to the buyer, right? Which, I mean, of course, you have to be fair in that process, not too much of it, so that you can remain competitive. But one thing you also want to do is identify the market to target. We've talked about that earlier, so I'm not going to go into details. But you also want them to look at your existing network for relevant contact. Like I said, oh, it could be family members, it could be church members, it could be, it could be even Muslim communities, it could be anything, just like in your network. It could even be, oh, old colleagues from school, get on Facebook, find them. It could even be on Instagram. Like I said, also LinkedIn is very useful. And then for younger people who know, oh, my people who are like, oh, they know how to like use Twitter X, right? They're like on there banting, recognizing people who are like, but when you do hashtag Kenya or you do location, you're finding people in that market. So you're able to then engage and have conversations, right? And then you're now probably finding more people who are interested in similar things or even in your same industry. So what you then want to do after you've identified local partners to work with, of course, you would have researched also the law and all of those, right? What you're then now doing is also tailoring your brand message. If you sell in Nigeria now by saying, oh, let's say there's a bit of local context to it, whereby you're saying good morning, oh, and then you're writing good morning in different languages, African, Nigerian languages. If you're going to Kenya, majority of people there are Swahili speakers. So you're not necessarily going to be seeing people who can understand our Nigerian, Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa, Tiv, anything you're speaking. Like they might never understand that, right? So it's ideal to make sure that, but even not just the language bits now, but even the messaging. So in their market, like I mentioned, your product might be something they value for their health. So for instance, our local beans in Nigeria, we use it in ewedu, in egusi. People use it for different things, vegetables, all sorts. In Kenya, they use it for tea, like actual drinking tea. They call it dawa dawa tea, right? So different markets, different usages or different use cases for your product. So you want to know, okay, what would my product best fit in this market? And so when you're selling that market, you're selling to them to say, oh, the best locust based quality for your tea. To make your tea, you can make it yourself at home. This and this. Maybe you now want to start to like do YouTube videos to promote it, to say, okay, you know what, this is how to use it, this is how to do it. You might then have to even learn something new in that process, right? So your consumer behavior also matters. So you want to then do they drink the tea in the morning, or are there people who drink tea mostly at night? What's the weather like? All of those things are determining factors, right? They are factors you need to like take into consideration. And then of course you then want to now figure out how do you distribute. Somebody has ordered, because we might find you buyers. So how do we then move it from Nigeria? Let's say you're in Nasarawa. How do we move your goods from Nasarawa to someone in, say, in Kumasi in Ghana? So all of those things need to be considered. How will your products reach the end consumer? And then we want to be able to manage the orders, fix your prices, stay at alert when prices are changing in the market, in your export market, in the new market, especially around like your products, right? Those are things you want to take into consideration. So that said, right, there is global trade, there is intra-African trade. So, but at Trade Flow, we are much more putting on the challenge to say, carrying the challenge, say, you know what, we want SMEs, MSMEs to know that they are not too small to export. Number one. So similar to how you say not too young to run, you're not too small to export. That's number one. And number two, there is immense opportunity, untapped opportunity under the AFCFTA, African Continental Free Trade Area. It will be so. This is an agreement, right? That came into full effect in 2019, but founded in 2018 March, right? And then what this has done, that's created the largest free trade area in the world. So you know how in Europe you have, like, if you're going to Europe, you get your Schengen visa. You can literally access, or even if what you do is apply through, let's say, the Italian embassy, with that visa, you can enter like the rest of Europe, right? Everyone in the European Union, right? All the countries. So similar to how the goods also move, right? So I want to sell to people in other markets, or you want to buy and sell to them. It's the same single market, like a single platform all across. So Nigeria and the rest of Africa, everyone is trying to like to replicate that same success, right? And then what we're saying is this, that no one should be left behind, especially not MSMEs that will create the most jobs, especially as they grow. If you are required to start to do, let's say, a container, or even just like 5 packs now, or five cartons of your product today, at some point you need to hire more people, even if it's just one more person. What you're doing is you're creating jobs, right? So AFCFTA means Africans and African businesses, you can now access a much larger market, right? Instead of just saying, oh, 200 million people plus. And out of the 200 million people, how many people can even buy your product here? Maybe about 20 million. And how many people can even reach? Maybe the product is not even a big deal to them here at home, and it's something bigger to them in another country that you've identified, right? Or we've identified for you. What you're then doing is that you have over 1.4 billion people across Africa to target. These are people that probably don't even speak English. They're probably Francophone African people, right? So French speaking Africa. Like it could be Cote d'Ivoire, it could be Senegal, it could be any of those, right? So you're thinking to yourself, even Senegal, they even still speak English, right? So, but imagine all these other places that you go to. Morocco, for instance, English is not the major language. They speak Arabic. So you're thinking, and they would literally need your product. How do you get it to them? But AFCFTA does it for you in such a way that you can access all these people. And Africa as a whole, together under AFCFTA, we would have like in fact, we have a GDP of over 3 trillion US dollar. So now imagine if you have access to that. And that's what AFCFTA is basically all about. It's still like in the early phases. Everyone is trying to do their best as a country to make sure that, oh, they reap the benefits. Ghana is doing an amazing job. Nigeria is in the process of also doing a fantastic job, especially as we get on that what is now called, also get to participate in what is called the Guided Trade Initiative. From the name, the trade is guided, like your buying and selling is guided. It's as simple as that, right? But what it does is essentially these different countries exchanging value, right? So that's why you need to be at alert and knowing that, okay, you know what, this is when Guided Trade Initiative, GTI, will be happening for Nigeria. The news is not yet out on the exact date, right? At least as at this morning. So what you're doing is that you're checking to see, oh, where would the benefit come? What would when will it start? And how do I get into it? So what the country would do, and what our own AFCFTA National Coordination Office here would do, most likely, like the other countries have done, is to identify companies that they want to take along for this sale, or products that they want to go and exhibit, or even exchange with other markets, right? And then they would identify and say, okay, you know what, in Angola, they buy this and they import it a lot from China. But Nigeria has it. For instance, in Angola, they import a lot of beauty products. In Nigeria alone, We'll be manufacturing our own beauty product things, even if people are not manufacturing locally. At least we have own brands from House of Tara of those days, which is still relevant, to Nuban Beauty of these days, to Zaron, all of those different products. Even your clothing, you're thinking, oh, you know what, these people like West African fashion. You can take it there. Oh, our jewelry style is different. You can, or maybe you make beads, local beads, you use it for whatever it is you're creating. There's a market for you under AFCFTA, right? And it is important for you to explore it. What it does for you is that it grants you market access. Even right here in Togo, nobody knows for a fact, except you do your research, if your product would be something considered valuable. And if it is, why are you stopping? It might not even be, Togo might not even be the end use case, right? It might be that, oh, you know what, people in Togo are also buying so that they can resell. But so far, you're making your money for a start, and you're growing your business, and you can sustain your business, and your business is not crashing under the economic situation here in the country. That is the most important for a business. And your business can then go on to make impact, hire more people, train other people on how to do the kind of thing you do. You know, it is it is an opportunity under AFCFTA. Another thing is that, of course, you can then diversify your business, so you're not just selling to Nigeria. So, for instance, this is pure data, right? Nigeria exports like more agricultural goods to Asia and Europe. You know, but while Nigeria exports manufactured goods, that is most likely finished products, right, to the rest of Africa, as at 2020, it was to the tune of over $4 billion. That means intra-African trade is happening. Some Nigerians are exporting manufactured goods to other African countries that is worth over $4 billion. So it was just 2020. We're still like looking for like the most recent data of like say 2023, right? To say how has that increased? Because it will just continue to increase, especially as more Nigerians are looking for opportunities to grow their revenue, right? More Nigerian businesses are looking to grow their revenue, and more individual Nigerians are looking for opportunities to increase their income, right? You know, it could even be as simple as, okay, so for the one of, oh, agricultural goods to Asia and Europe, let's even leave Asia and Europe, right? Look at Canada, for instance. A lot more Nigerians are going there. What is it that you can sell to them that you have currently? You don't even have to like go out of what you sell. What you currently sell, what you currently is your area of expertise, your field of expertise, might be something very valuable. You know, a Nigerian young person who has gone there who is looking for side hustle. They are literally like your first marketer in that market, right? So these are like also affordable ways to market your goods, right? And so what I'm trying to do now is to make sure that I'm mixing as much as possible because of time. And then when AFCFTA, so we should not be praying for the success of AFCFTA and working towards the robust implementation. And the one I believe one of the best ways, or one of the best ways we can get it, we can make sure that we can ensure optimal implementation, right? Is to ensure there is so much awareness about it. When it's on the tongue of the average man, average woman, when everybody's talking about it, when it's like, oh, this is what we must do, or we want this, it mounts a bit of pressure on our own national coordination office here. That's not to say you should put pressure on them. They're doing the best they can do, but it mounts a bit of pressure and encourages them, motivates them to say, you know what, there are more people interested in this. What can we do? They start to think more innovatively to say, okay, let's create matchmaking events, let's invite people, or let's find Nigerians in all these other markets that can take things for Nigerians there to sell. Really, and then of course, all within the law, right? Um, but that said, there's also the importance of like collaborating and or collaboration and networking. And this is an opportunity that AFCFTA gives you. And AFCFTA also prioritizes digital trade. There's a protocol on that in the works, not necessarily just in the works, but like implementation wise now. And there's the one coming up around women and youth as well. It's a lot of people have been deliberating to say, okay, there'll be preferences for like women, youth, of course, young men, young women like myself, all of us can benefit from this. And these are the pillars of like what we do at Trade Flow Africa with Intra-African Trader Center, right? Making sure that there's visibility amongst our buyers and sellers on the continent, amongst our SMEs on the continent, across different countries. The woman who is currently now selling locust beans to people in Kenya, she might not even have like enough at every point in time. She probably doesn't mind buying from a Nigerian. And also in that process, she's learned a lot, right? That she can share with her fellow MSMEs, right? So this is the importance of like saying, oh, this kind of community we're building at the center, right? But that said, AFCFTA is very important. Please learn as much as you can about it. Ask all the questions. I'm going to quickly run through all the some of the major agencies you would experience when you're exporting. Of course, there's the CAC. If you don't have your document, I mean, doing an ideal legitimate exportation might not be feasible. So because for you to even open a bank account that you use to collect your money, even on the fintech apps where your money will not disappear, the ones that are regulated, you need to have your CAC document. You need to have all these means of identification and regulation, right? To verify that you're a real business, right? Of course, Nigerian Customs Service, they're the border controllers. We need them. You need to accustom yourself to the requirements, right? Of course, there's NAFDAC, there are the port authorities, there's Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, that'll make sure that you match the quality that you're taking out. But the most robust one that covers everything for you is the Nigerian Export Promotion Council. It is important that you try to register with Nigerian Export Promotion Council. You get an exporter certificate. It's important. So one of the things that they will require is that you must have a signed export contract between you as the exporter and, of course, the buyer in the other country as the importer. So it's just an agreement. It's something your lawyers can draft here, or you can, but preferably you have a lawyer do it. Please, you have a lawyer do it. Probably your lawyers can draft it here. So part of what we do at Trade Flow is that part of the center, we make sure that everybody that can be useful to the SME growth, that especially the SMEs that are looking to export, right? Those are like our own primary focus for IATC and even Global Africa Trade Initiatives at Trade Flow. Every we've not exhausted them all, but from logistics we're partnering with them, to insurance companies we're partnering with them, to financing companies we're partnering with them, to payment collectors we're partnering with them, and of course even to the legal firms. So we have firms that are doing that, they will say they have bouquets that are very law firms that will say they have bouquets that are very friendly for SMEs, so they can create your what do you call it now, your agreement, your export agreement, for as low as, I cannot put a price to it. It depends on what the conversations are with them. But what we do is that we negotiate with them as well, right? To say, okay, you know what? Because there are so many people coming at the same time for this export contract, you have to give a certain number of discounts or a certain amount of discount. It's part of our work. It's intense, but we believe it's worth it, because we are hoping that you become big, and that when you become, because we believe you become big, and when you become big, you hire more people, and then you recruit more people, you create more jobs. That's part of our own impact tracking. That's one of the importance of our work, to say, okay, are there more jobs being created? Because at the core, even for me as a person, as a founder of the company, is, are there more jobs being created at the end of the day? Dignified jobs, of course, not abusing any of the human rights, any of the human rights, any of the human rights in general, you know. And then so one of the things we're also then doing is to say, oh, you know what, as a company, are you, or as an SME, our own goal is to say, you know what, we know that you will grow. And when you grow, you then move on to our agency, right? Where you're dealing with the big boys, or where you become the big boys, the big girls. And then what we are doing is that we're then handling you as a proper large company, or almost large company. So those are the kind of situations, right? So anyway, back to NEPC, we have the health certificates that you have to, like, for your processed and semi-processed food items. NEPC requires that you have that, and it's issued by NAFDAC. So you can see why I said it's more robust, because it covers everything. Then you have the commercial documents. I won't go into details, I'll just list them. Your commercial invoice, your packing list. Your packing list is what we indicate. All these things I'm saying, they're available on NEPC website. So it is not, so even if it sounds strange, NEPC, I repeat, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, it is as simple as that, right? So Google them, they're online, check their website. Of course, we're in talks with, like, some of these public sector players as well, to make sure that, okay, getting an NEPC certificate should be easy for you, right? So those are kind of conversations we're having ongoing right now. So of course there is the export, of course, financial documents as well. So we have the Nigerian export proceed form. We have the commercial invoice again, which is usually issued by you as the exporter, right? And then of course you want to then have like a pro forma invoice, which is an offer by you to sell your goods at a certain price, and all the certain terms you have around it in a very formal manner. So all these things are useful for you as a business. They might seem robust and overwhelming, but they are useful because you're then able to track. And you know, one thing they say businesses, especially SMEs, face, they talk about longevity. And if we're saying we want to build a stronger future for Africa, you know, what we're thinking about is, how do we ensure that we are building businesses that outlive us, businesses that become legacy businesses? They might not necessarily be the biggest, But there are things that would. I heard a story of a woman. So she's I think she's in her 80s now, right? But she has handed over to her son, who now sells. It doesn't have to be a family business, but handing over to her son, who now sells. So second generation gala sellers. So they built a business out of it, so much so that the son even finds it valuable to say, you know what, there's no need going to go and look for a corporate job in one office. My mother has been doing this business for years. And she's been selling this gala business and doing it for years, that it's been so profitable. And it's how she's been able to even send them to school and to where they are right now. To say, okay, let us now. She's handing over, she's getting old. She's handing over to a second generation person, a child, right? And then it doesn't even have to be a family person, like we said. So, but these kind of documents help you build these structures. When you're building relationships and you're documenting, signing agreements, you know that you can hold the other person, the other markets responsible. They can be sued. So all of these requirements for NAPC, you of course you will have, like, you need your goods movement document. Like this, you need, if you're sending by land, you need your bill of, you need your, what's it called now? If you're sending by land, you need your road transport bill, for instance. You're sending by sea, you need your bill of lading, for instance. By air, you need your airway bill. So if you're using a cargo flights and stuff. And then of course you want to also then certificate of like weight, quality, all of those things. And there's even a certificate of origin. So there's something under ASCFTA that really speaks to origin. And then there's a rule of origin is also how they want to be determining, truly, is this product an African product? Is this product really coming from Nigeria? So that is what also NASIMA does for you. That's the National Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture. So they help you indicate through that certificate, right, of origin, the origin of your goods. It is very important for trade agreements, leveraging trade agreements, right? So how we're talking about, does Nigeria have a good relationship or a favorable trade relationship with another company or another country rather? So you're thinking about it like, okay, so how do I leverage that? How do I show them that I'm from Nigeria? How do I show them that even if parts of my products are manufactured or are imported, but the major, maybe arrangement or packaging is done here in Nigeria, or maybe like your core ingredient is something you source locally, right? So you want to look within. And then in that process, in that same line of thought, then there is Nexim, right? That's Nigerian Export Import Bank. So these are for people who are more concerned about like getting finance facilities, right? You're thinking, it is, where do I get my money from to finance this export? So, and Nexim, Nigerian Export Import Bank is 100% government owned. It is a good source of getting finance facilities. I mean, and they have a good number of them, which are majorly export related. So what they do is that they provide you with export credit guarantee, credit insurance facilities to you. And then it might not necessarily be, so a lot of people say, oh, before I reach Nexim, before they respond. So you might not necessarily go through that route, right? But however, to qualify, you just have to make sure that you're a Nigerian company that is duly registered, right? And you also are registered as an exporter with NEPC. So you see the importance of NEPC again coming up. And then, of course, you can either go directly to them where you apply directly to Nexim, or you apply through commercial banks. But then there'll be issues of like, oh, are the interest rates favorable, especially through the commercial banks and all of that, right? So there are other alternatives. So we have like partnerships we're building with like fintech companies that are sponsoring, not sponsoring in that sense, but like are financing and supporting exporters in that case. So yeah, so this is like, this is not exhaustive of the issues you can come across in or of the challenges of the solutions that you may meet when you're exporting out of Nigeria or out of Africa, right? But however, if what you're looking for is say finance, you have to then identify exactly which ones are like SME friendly. So that's what we've done, identifying SME friendly financing firms and making sure that we're following up with them in that order, right? So one of the things that we also then come across in these conversations is the, how do I put it now? Is the talks about, okay, now that I've gone to the market, how do I keep myself in that market, right? Like we said, it's majorly about relationship building. You should remember that you're first dealing with human beings and not necessarily companies, as the case may be. Even though you're dealing with the company directly, you're dealing with human beings first, right? And then one other thing you want to take note of is the Nigerian prohibition list. So we have export prohibition list. So if let's say you manage to sell exotic animals in Nigeria, animals that are about to go into extinction. Please don't go and sell that abroad. You cannot even export it. It's prohibited, right? Maize, for instance, is still prohibited. So normal like maize, like our maize here, is still prohibited. But however, even the same way they say rubber is prohibited, Nigeria still ships rubber to what do we call it now? To South Africa, for instance. So what is when you think about it, that why is it prohibited? There are so many reasons. There was once, I think about 2 years ago, there were talks about, oh, with this issue of Ukraine war starting, or if we start to like ship, like there'll be much more demand on our own maize and stuff, or we need to even like manufacture to feed the people at home so that we have like food security, which is very important, right? Which is what organizations like African Development Bank, they are pushing for, Afrexim Bank, to make sure that, you know what, there's food security at home before you even export. But then that shouldn't stop businesses from exporting. But however, because it's prohibited, so the lawyer in me usually tells people, and the lawyer in a lot of like all our legal advisors always tell people that, you know what, you can export maize content that you are manufacturing at home into packaged goods. I mean, data already says that Nigeria exports more of manufactured goods to other African countries, right? It doesn't have to be the raw material. It doesn't have to, even same thing as rubber, right? It doesn't have to be the raw material. So it could be a processed good. Nobody's gonna say, oh, you're exporting maize when what you're exporting is, say, biscuits that you've made from just maize, right? So those are two different things. So while you're even addressing and checking if your good is on the if your product is on the prohibition list, you're also then checking to see if your product um can what how do we put it now, can also grow beyond that, right? If you can also then maybe with a bit more investment or with a bit more support, right, your product can be transformed into something that is export friendly and valuable for the market. Please remember, you're not too young or not too small to export. So that will be all from me. Thank you for having me, and thank you for listening to my plenty talks.
Thank you
um
very much, Madam Didolapo. That was a beautiful one. And I'm sure everybody here have taken more than one, because here you already told us you're not too small to grow to export your business. You already gave the regulations you should have as a business before you can export your business. You already told us the organizations we should be looking forward to and the regulation we should be getting information from. Thank you very much, Madam Idolapo, and we appreciate.
my
So yeah,
pleasure.
it's time for question. If you have any question, please go ahead. Yes, Chioma, you can go ahead and ask your question.
All right, thank God I'm still here. My battery is as low can be because I've been in transit.
Chioma, I hope you're
Um,
in our community.
yes, I am. That's where I
Oh,
got the link
all right,
from.
very well.
Okay, so I've listened to her very keenly and all the things that she listed. Okay, talking about myself in particular, I want to be a little bit selfish here. I have my CAC, I have my NEPC license, I have NAFDAC for one product and also going for NAFDAC for the other products. I have my FDA, and I know that is not exhaustive of all the list of requirements, but it's an ongoing process and it's a learning process. So I want I at least I have a few of the requirements. So where I am now, like I said in my first comment, is how do I get my sample to you so that you can show it to or use it to source for market, and then I can, because I've been training for exports for the past 3 years now, and I've been gathering the things little by little because of course the funding is not there. But I am not rushing for funding. I want to get, because once I have a buyer, I know the fundings will come. So I am looking for buyers. So how do I start?
Okay, thank you again, Madam Choma. Yes, so specifically, you can reach out to us at talk to us at tradeflow.africa. So that's the email. If you're on Instagram, check us out at tradeflow Africa. You can send us a DM. I'm sure my marketing people would reach out and then pass your information along, and then we can then start to have the conversation. So if you're reaching out via email, you're just referencing the program at the Nest. You're mentioning the fact that, of course, you're part of that community, which is also a way to just also vet you to say, okay, you know what? I mean, I've heard your voice on this call. If I see your name, I don't think I would miss it or forget it. So we can then have the conversation from there to then say, okay, what are your products? Because for instance, I do not know exactly, but I can see foods in the name. So I can imagine it's something that's to do with food. And I'm very happy to hear that you even already have your NEPC certificate. So that's amazing. Well done, ma'am. So reach out to us and then we can take the conversation from there. And then we can even start to then identify what exactly is your product, which is the market, right? That it's most ideal for. And we can then find buyers for you in that market and get you a success story for a start. How about that? How does it sound?
That sounds great. My products are derivatives of agri products, corn, millets, soya
Ah,
beans, cassava. So
We'll have
they
them.
are all packaged products.
okay. Okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. So please let's have a conversation. Thank you. Like I said, it's for free for SMEs. So feel free to reach out to us. Don't kill us, but feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you
Please
very much for
just put
that,
your email
Madam
address on the
Dolapo.
chat box. Please. Put your email address on the chat box, please.
Okay, I'll do that. So this is our outreach email address. My personal is different, but be rest assured that we're going to see this. It is definite. It is definite. Okay, I've sent that now. Let me see. Can you see that
Okay.
now?
Hello?
Hello, can you see that now?
No, we
No,
haven't gotten it.
no, it's
Okay,
not there yet.
okay, let me try again. Okay, but I will do that while we go on, so I don't take everyone's time. But please go on.
Okay. Yes, Clara
Hello?
Daniel, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hello?
Yes, we
Okay,
can hear
thank
you.
you very much.
You can hear me?
Good afternoon,
Yes, we
everyone.
can.
You should be able to see
Yeah,
the email address now. Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah,
my name
I've
is
seen.
Raphael. Hello?
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Can you
Can
hear
you
me,
hear
ma?
me?
Yeah, hold on. We can hear Clara Daniel.
Yeah, you asked me to unmute and speak.
Okay, yes, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I've listened extensively to our speaker, and it's been like an answer to my prayers for a very long time. Anyway, but most of the questions, 90% of my question has been answered already. But
Then
the
you must
least
be
one
you will never say no
I
ask.
need to get from you is, what about SMEs like us that have not yet gotten NAFDAC? Like the last person that spoke, she has gotten quite a lot of documentation. What about us that have not yet gotten all those? Is there still hope for us? That's number one. Then number two, can your company is there any way you can assist us to get that done? That's what I wanted to find out. Then the third question I'm asking, you mentioned subsidiary earlier when you spoke. Please, can you explain a little bit about that subsidiary? I want to understand more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for that. Yes, like you mentioned, so Madam Choma is an exceptional case, right? A lot of people have been trying to get some of these. Some people are not even aware, right? Let's even
I
start from there.
also do processed food. Yes.
Processed food, okay. So there's also like sometimes like lack of awareness on the kind
Okay.
of the product of the what's it called certifications to get. Like she mentioned, is she's been 3 years in the journey of like gathering some of
Yes.
these documents and doing all of this work and all. But yes, so there's hope for people who do not yet have this, and that's why we're starting by saying there is e-commerce platforms, right? There are e-commerce platforms. It is not the most ideal way, and I'm going to repeat that. This is not the most ideal way because it is not advisable to ship products or to sell products that NAFDAC is not certifying here.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
number one. But then it doesn't stop you from having conversations online. So e-commerce is a good start. So
Okay.
say Jumia is equivalent in some of these other countries. Those things
Okay.
we can do the research for you, but there are also things you can even easily do yourself on phone, right? So it's quite straightforward. So identifying them, but then where the issue then comes up is like, oh, pitching to them because they might then require that, oh, maybe you are local in their country, and then you might then start to have to find someone in that country. So because this is another thing, right? Not in every country is NAFDAC recognized in that sense, if you get what I'm saying. So you might have a
Okay.
NAFDAC certified product here, but
Okay.
once you're able to get your export certificate, it helps things even a lot better, right?
Okay.
But not in every country. Their country might then require that, oh, you localize your registration, right? And that's where the play of or the part of and importance of having a local partner comes in. So they're the ones who will
Okay.
carry the headache how do we get you into the market, right? So part of what we do is to find those local partners. We do it for the big companies, right? Currently, we have one of our alcoholic beverage part companies clients coming from the UK, manufacturing in France, and they're quite a big household name in the UK, right? Especially amongst the youth. They make gin, whiskey, and all of those things, right? And then some of the
All right.
ingredients from Africa, from across Africa. So that's a good opportunity for us, right? It's okay, yeah. It's still an intra-African play. Bring it on, bring it into the country. We get them distributors. So those are local partners. So interestingly, in Nigeria, we are working with them on their NAFDAC, on securing the NAFDAC. But in Ghana, for them to get an FDA license, it's something else entirely. So which is like the equivalent, which is like the counterpart of NAFDAC in Ghana. So for them to
Yeah.
get it is very difficult. So they probably have to have they even have they need a significant amount of local participation. There are places in Ghana that there are banks that will not even open a bank account for you just because you are not Ghanaian, right? Not just because you're Nigerian, just because you're not Ghanaian. So local participation, local partnership. But who do you trust? Who do you work with? So it is
Mm.
as simple as, first of all, identifying the easiest way to sell. So the fact that you're not selling in like in what people would call significant export quantity, you might still be able to get away with a few things. Or find a local buyer, someone who is willing to just buy, like what Madam Chama was saying. Find someone who will just buy first, which is what we do. We connect you to those buyers, and then, but preferably if you don't have all of those documentations, what you're then looking for is to say, you know what, an e-commerce platform. Let me list my product there. Is how people go and list on Alibaba. But a lot of people don't even know that Jumia is not like the only one, right? Jumia has their counterparts across these other countries that people locally use. So it requires like a lot of like local knowledge and local understanding, which is what we try to gather together. It's a lot of work, but it's what we try to gather together can be useful. So I think that answers your number one question, your first question, right? And second
Yeah.
question about if we can help you secure those documents, yes, we can. But what we do,
Okay.
like we mentioned, is that so trade flow actually is not the one doing it for you because we're doing it for free, right? What we are doing is that some of our law firms, for instance, our legal partners that we are working with, that we partnered with, like there is one
Okay.
that so they have like bouquets that are very SME friendly. We're seeing conversations with one of them
Okay.
yesterday that is based in Abuja to say, you know what, how can we make sure that your prices are much more friendly to SMEs?
Okay.
What we're not telling them is that, you know what, when there are more SMEs, right, you stand to gain more as a lawyer. So why build them now when they will still need you for so many services? Why not
Exactly.
wait for them to grow? Which is what we are doing. But people will say, oh, how am I getting that make money? But you have the bigger boys you're attending to, same strategy that we are using. But the point is that if we do not support our younger companies to grow, it's people who have supported trade flow, for instance. So if you don't support our smaller businesses to grow, how are they going to get to the level whereby they are the bigger companies? And then when they are getting to that level, we believe that they'll be loyal to us because we are the ones who have been there with them all along through the journey. So same thing we've been pitching to all of these different companies, and a lot of them have been very forthcoming and very open to like, oh, instead of like saying where they will charge 120K because maybe 40K is their own gain, they will say, okay, you know what? For this trademark, I can do 70K, I can do 80K, and I'll fast track instead of coming out in 6 months. We can let it come out in like say about 3 weeks, 1 month. Yes, there are cases like that, and there are people like there are law firms, and those are the ones we're identifying. So yes, they can
All
help
these
you
ones
with
keep
your.
connecting, no fit connect.
Okay, someone okay. So they can help you with your NAVDAC, they can help you with your CSC documents, your NEPC, and all of those things all in one, right? So that answer is yes. So those are the kind of supports that we provide at Intra-African Trader Center, an initiative under Trade Flow Africa. And then so that is on one side. Also, then the third question is about subsidiary, right? I think
Yes.
okay. So
Yes. Yes.
subsidiary, okay, so subsidiary is quite straightforward. Um so you know how there is UBA Nigeria, and I use the
Yes.
UBA example because it's quite a popular one. So there's UBA, and then so there's UBA Group. So UBA Group we then have so UBA Group is the one that can say owns or has the majority share or stake in UBA America. Uh,
Okay.
even in the one in Dubai that they just opened when I think a while back now, and even like even the UBA in Nigeria. So that group of companies, so they're always subsidiaries. So the subsidiary structure is that there is a major company. So let's say now your company grows to an extent, and then you're saying, you know what, you want to then have a different company. It can even bear the same exact name, right? But in a different
Okay.
country, for instance. So it becomes a subsidiary. So, but then if it's a group of companies, so these are like usually companies that are not necessarily doing the same exact things. But then you can say, you know what, this is a subsidiary of our company. We are in agriculture. Another name can be in, let's say, in oil and gas. Another one can be in fashion. Another one can be in this, and then you have a mother company that is like the umbrella for all of them. So a subsidiary mechanism is good, but it's not most friendly for MSMEs to expand because it
Okay.
can be quite expensive. The approaches we're trying to let people be more aware of is how do you get into the market without even spending so much?
Okay.
As opposed to you now go and set up the Ghana, for instance, tell you to go and find a local person, you will form the business together. One of my friends owns a company in Ghana, and we always laugh about this. She doesn't own the company in Ghana, but she owns it, like in the name and everything. So what she's trying to do is to make sure that that company becomes a subsidiary of the Nigerian company that she owns the majority stake in.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
the company in Ghana is not owned, even the bank account, she's not signatory to it. So whatever money she's receiving from a Ghanaian clients, it doesn't necessarily mean our partners they cannot mess her up any day, anytime. But because
Yes.
she's like put as a subsidiary under the Nigerian one, simply means withholding some resources as well, being very strategic about it. So it's not necessarily the most friendly because it just means you then have to like build that company, pay taxes for that one, pay taxes for this one, not the fairest. Does that answer all your questions, ma'am?
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. I have a NAFDAC number, okay, but NAFDAC certification. But the export, do you think me getting the exports now is okay without sorry, I have CAC, but I don't have NAFDAC yet. Do you think having the export license it
Oga,
will
go
be
get
priority
comment
to
this
getting
question again for
NAFDAC?
public, please.
Sorry, please come again with that. Someone unmuted, but I can hear you now.
Okay, I said I have the CSC certification,
Yes.
right? But I don't have
Yes.
NAFDAC. Do you think having the export license is going to be the best thing before the NAFDAC? Which one should come first?
I would advise the NAFDAC comes first.
Okay,
Because
no problem. All right,
export
thank you.
people is part of what they look out for, right? So there's some of the documents that'll be issued. Some documents they expect you to have that be issued by NAFDAC. So, but then, like
Okay,
I said, it does not necessarily stop you from starting to sell to other markets.
exactly. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Tuma. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Madam Jidoapo, and I hope she answered your question, Clara. Yes, Raphael,
Yes,
you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good afternoon.
Okay, my name is Raphael Owens Usazugi. I'm from Edo State. Actually, I'm into agro processing and packaging. I do exportation too. Recently, I exported about 2 tons of gari to the US. But the issue I have is that I don't have NAFDAC documentation. I don't have certificates. I don't have the FDA and other certificates. But I succeeded in exporting through a marketer who is in the US that directed me to a private exporter, and my goods now left my farm, my factory to the exporters center in Lagos before they now export it. So my question is that how will Nigeria Export Promotion Council recognize me as an exporter?
Thank you, sir, for that question. And I'm happy that we keep seeing even solutions and even like situations that are answering other questions. So when Madam Clara, for instance, had asked about if she can even get started, it's not the most ideal way, but this is Mr. Raphael saying he's done it and then he's had success. So there are even private exporters who would carry your products for you. So that's part of why we're saying the easiest is even say find an e-commerce platform. Let's even start from there. And then there are all these
Exactly.
exporters. Then you have to then cut agreements with them, right? And then there are local marketers in all those other markets. But to answer your question, sir, about Export Promotion Council, you asked if they would recognize you as an exporter.
Yes, because I have the certificate.
Or do you have the exporter certificate?
Yes, ma.
NEPC.
Yes.
Okay, so if I may ask, what kind of recognition are we talking about here? Is it
As in,
like
there was a
okay?
training I attended that they told me about the NAZIM accounts, FCA something account. You go and open the account so that your transaction will be verified by the NMPC and the central banks, some stuff like that. So I don't know
Yes.
how the Nigeria Export Promotion Council will recognize me or know that my company has exported. Because
Okay.
I'm aware that every year there's a kind of calculation that Nigeria Export Promotion Council do to know how how
Yes.
many tons of exportation you did, and how they can still make some kind of grant somehow.
Okay. So thank you for that. So what I'm hearing here is more of a relationship based approach, right?
Yeah.
You are looking at a situation whereby whenever so you want NAPC to say, you know what, this man is an exporter, this business is an exporting business, right? This
Yes,
business
yes,
is
yes.
valuable in this space. So I think
Yeah.
it's a and I'm going to like be as practical as possible and as straightforward as possible, right? Without also saying too much. But like
Okay.
it is a relationship approach. So you probably want to go or next time you join, not necessarily like a virtual thing, preferably a personal thing, right? A more individual approach to when we're in Nigeria, we're in Africa, we're in the world. The human, like we're all human beings at the end of the day. So NEPC, the officials, you might come across them when you attend some of their some of these conferences, not necessarily even virtual ones, preferably physical, right? We then
Yeah.
start to familiarize yourself with those people. Like pick one person that you realize, okay, you know what, I can have good conversation with this person. This person understands what I'm trying to do, but more of from an approach of, oh, what can we do to benefit each other, right?
Okay.
As I
Okay.
so this is an individual. They are the ones who would then, in a way, become your champion because as far as NEPC is concerned, if you have the certificates, you're already recognized. You understand what I mean? Like
Oh,
you're already recognized, you're in the database, you're in the logs and all of that, right? And if you're then
yeah.
doing all the other accounts opening and everything, you're already recognized. But here, what you're looking for here, what I'm sensing here is that you're looking for a situation where there is a more there's a deepened relationship. You want a deeper relationship with them. So what I
Yes.
would
Yes.
expect is that relationship building. I mean, even at Trade Flow here, we're in talks with them as well to make sure that exports, people getting export certificates can be easy. All of those things can just be smooth, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is, right now I'm in Abuja. I had to travel down here for this as well. And then there is an event. There's a presidential event later this evening about the billboards are everywhere. For MSMEs, an MSME award dinner.
Yes.
So at such events, right, we meet all these people. It's not necessarily that I was saying it earlier today. I mean, it's not necessarily for this call, but like I was telling one of my friends yesterday and today that why would there be an MSME dinner and they're not all MSME? Of course, you can't have all MSMEs and millions,
Yeah.
but like, I mean, there should be
Yeah.
like some MSMEs that will know that okay, they're not necessarily like popular MSMEs, and I think that's what you're talking about here. That your brand might
Yeah.
not be like popular, but like you need that access, you need that recognition, you need that it's mutually access. So it's
Yes.
part of like
No,
so
sorry, sorry, if I may come in. There is
okay,
a calculation that NNPC normally calculates how
yes, please go on.
they will not divide it by 4, and some part will come to you
Yes,
at the end of the year.
yes, yes.
And I have a limited liability company registered, and I have an NNPC certificate, but I don't have the NAFDAC and other certification document. I want to know how or who will I meet to let them know that I have done this, and what will I do?
Okay.
That is the
Would you
policy.
like so a direct approach now as opposed to saying you should find someone yourself or meet someone? Would you like us to like talk to our own contacts there and see what we can pull for you?
Yeah, if possible, I will do. I would like.
Okay, okay. So please reach out to us. The email is in the chat. We will be able to reach out to someone for you and ask questions on your behalf.
I will
If
do
that
that.
was
Thank you very much.
all right, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Lamidi Dolapo. I can see, in fact, I had a lot of questions, but you already answered all of them. And thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure
I
the
can
other
see
person
that.
here appreciates it as well.
Thank you very much. I can see that there's a question by Madam Alice Madaki. She said, "Is Nigeria a member of AFCFTA?" Yes, ma, Nigeria is a member. We even have a national coordination office here. That's so the person in charge is Mr. Shegun Omisawo, who used to be in charge of Nigerian Export Promotion Council just years ago. So yes, we do have that. Sorry, over to you. Sorry for interrupting you. Yes, I'm done now. I'm done answering the questions.
Yes, sorry, my internet went off for a minute. All right, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Like I said earlier, Yeah, I'm sorry, my internet went off again. Yeah, like I said earlier, if you joined us late, so we do this every month. We have this session every month where we share valuable insights and knowledge with people on different topics. So yeah, today is International Award MSME Day, and that's why we have an expert here to give us valuable insights. So we'll have another one next month. And for you to get that information, you can join us in our community. I just dropped the link to join the community on the WhatsApp, on the chat box. I'm going to drop it again. So there you get information on our various programs that we do at the Nest. We also get information on grant opportunities and all of that in our community. So do well to join our community, and we'll be sharing other information with you there. Thank you very much for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.